Good morning. Merry meet, hail and welcome to the Auckland Unitarian Church, where Sunday services have run for the last 114 years. Today we also welcome the goddess, god and great spirit of the neo-pagan tradition to celebrate Ostara, the return of the sun, the spring equinox. This week is also special as our Minister Clay Nelson and partner Rachel are in Brisbane enjoying the Common Dreams Conference, hopefully gaining great ideas to share with you in future sermons. Instead, I'm joined by David Rohe, who will share his talk about spring cleaning. Last spring, I talked a lot about how wet it was in Auckland. We'd had the highest rainfall in 3 years. This year, though, is quite different. I'm in a t-shirt most days, I've hung up my winter coat and hardly ever take my umbrella to work. The problem is the feeling of deja vu, as this is the 4th time that I've experienced spring this year. Twice in America and once in Europe already. I've enjoyed the spring flowering bulbs, lambs in the fields, warm days and crisp nights. So how do I stay grounded and true to my spirituality, maintaining a sense of home and belonging when life isn't so constant? Firstly, I eat local and in season. As an urban forager, I keep a constant eye on neighbouring fig, grapefruit and olive trees, rejoicing and indulging when they're finally ripe. Daisies, tulips, lavender and Chinese tunes are other plants I like to watch and harvest. After spending a week or so in the snow-covered landscape of North America, I was back in California and I grabbed the first flowering plant I saw, some lavender, and I carried the blooms around with me all evening, much to the amusement of my friends. I just needed to have that connection. The other way I stay connected is by being present for the sunrise and sunset whenever I can. This time of year, you can enjoy a full moonrise and a dazzling sunset just minutes apart. Nothing is better for getting your body tuned into the rhythm of nature. For today's offertory, we look towards the 7 guiding principles of Unitarian Universalism. It's a mouthful. We're looking at the goal of world community with peace, liberty, and social justice for all. Our community has a Peace and Social Justice Committee, and Paul is just going to give us an update of what they've been working on lately.
Thank you, Kurt. So just continuing the tradition of giving a very, very brief summary of what the committee has been up to over the previous month. So Henry attended the International Council of Unitarians and Universalists. This was held in the Netherlands. This was all at Marjorie and Henry's own expense, so that's really excellent. Henry reports that the conference focused on climate change and climate refugees, which is likely to be a huge problem in the future. He also said that in terms of our dyslexia programs in Tonga and Samoa, there was a lot of interest from both Burundi and India. I wasn't here, I've been overseas, but I hear that the Living Wage Evening went very, very well. This was strongly supported by the Peace and Social Justice Committee, and many thanks especially to Kay. The group has now expanded to 12, and everybody's very committed to being involved in a peace and social justice way for the church, so that's fantastic. The new Tongan dyslexia project is going very, very well. It's only just got off the ground, but you'll be hearing more about that in the future. And finally, Brenda has gone to a lot of trouble to write an article about the Samoa program in the latest Quest magazine, so please do try to read that. There should be hard copies arriving shortly at the church, and also there'll be a link in the newsletter. Don't go to the link now because it's the recent article has only just come out, and the current link in the newsletter takes you to the previous article. But we'll put that in the newsletter and also hopefully on the website. Right, thanks a lot.
Thank you, Paul.
Good morning. Can you hear okay? This thing's working? Okay. But I've been asked to use it. My prepared remarks are blissfully short. I want them to be an introduction or a stimulus for the open discussion after I finish. Spring cleaning. It's spring, the season of renewal. The earth and all its inhabitants are enlivened. Many of mankind's institutions are reinvigorated as well, like churches, eh? Like this church, bringing UU principles to Auckland and environs these past 114 years. New people, new programs, old and new issues receiving appropriate attention. Except there may need to be some spring cleaning to clear our space of the remnants of the elephant in the room. There is one, you know, an elephant in the room. Who here does not know what this saying indicates? The elephant in the room. Wonderful. So, what's the elephant in Auckland Unitarian Church's room? I don't know. But here's why I think there may be one. My evidence that there is an elephant in the room is that we, as a congregation, are a fairly static population, and probably have been for several years. We gain a few, lose a few, putter along, making financial ends meet with a population that can just afford the expenses. All this is in spite of the fact that we have an intellectually interesting and diverse group, a supportive membership. We have one of the most important aspects of a successful community, a core of people who've been around quite a while, who carry the history, traditions, and tenacity of the community. So I was going to have you stand up, but I think I'll just have you raise your hand if you've been here for at least 10 years as a member of part of this church. If you've been part of this church for at least 10 years, raise your hand. Keep it up if you've been here for at least 20 years. Keep it up if you've been here at least 30 years. Way to go, guys. That's wonderful, I think. And it's important. Now, as Clay pointed out in his talk on the 4th of September, the core values of this church, listed on the wall, right up there, are intrinsic. That means they're within ourselves. Attributes that we can demonstrate. And they match those of New Zealand. And as churches go, we are about as secular as you can get, which parallels the current trends of the country: less religiosity, more secularization. As I see it, as a church community in the 21st century, we've got it all, except the people. I'm bringing this up because I was a member of another UU church that experience exactly the same situation, limited population and needing to grow. But my previous church lacked many of the assets available to us here. Here's a synopsis of my previous experience, which I think can be instructive to us now. Augusta, Georgia, had a UU congregation that rocked along from the 70s into the 90s with a total number of pledging units, the main source of financial support for the church, of no more than 80, usually between 65 and 80. It had a church building of sorts, RE wing, employed ministers on and off, and had a tightly knit group of wonderful supporters who definitely had the best interests of the church at heart. However, in contrast to this church, the Augusta Church existed in the Deep South in the United States, a religiously very conservative locale. For example, the area across the street from the UU Church was occupied by the First Baptist Church of Augusta. That church represented the religious norm of the area much better than we, and you could tell. Their brick-faced physical plant sat in a multi-acre landscaped campus and consisted of the sanctuary building, a Sunday school building, and a recreational building with indoor basketball court. The steeple of the church costs significantly more than the entire net worth of the UU church property. UUism was a relatively tough sell in the neighborhood. I was able to serve that Augusta UU church in a few capacities, including serving on the board, and I still have many friends there. Sharon and I were married in that church. The one question that continually bedeviled the Augusta Church administration and long-term supporters was, how can we grow our church population? We instigated many efforts, including national-level consultants from the UU main offices in New England, a building development drive that built a new sanctuary and remodeled the rest of the physical plant. The phrase, "if you build it, they will come," comes to mind. Small group discussions, large group discussions, all resulting in about 80 pledging units, which now had to service a mortgage as well as the rest of the church activities. We were stuck. Now we were also broke. But we had a beautiful sanctuary. Sharon and I made it a small leaded glass window for the sanctuary. I can't remember the dates all that well, but for our purposes, it doesn't matter. We'll make up some just to illustrate. Let's say that in 1991, the Augusta UU Church had an average attendance at Sunday services of around 50, in a new sanctuary with seating for 100. Now, sort of like here. That year, the church finally confronted its elephant in the room. But the way they uncovered their issues, the elephant, resulted in terrific uproar, gigantic hurt feelings, and loss of membership. The church board, to their credit, and I wasn't on the board at the time, then instigated a restoration process, a spring cleaning. In 1996, after spending 5 years of systematically dealing with the residuals left by that elephant in the room, attendance had grown to the point that a second service was added to many Sundays in order to accommodate all who wanted to attend. A few months ago, I mentioned some of this scenario during talkback here at church. Clay retrieved the microphone from me and quietly said, "I bet they started to listen." Or something like that. In a nutshell, that is exactly what happened. I know because I was an integral part of the restorative process. I was one of 5 members of a mediation panel chosen by the board that received specific instruction in communication and group process. Our role as the mediation panel was to participate in church-wide seminars in communication and group process, to lead future ones, and to act as examples to the congregation at large at their various church functions and activities. The personal changes we each made, the 5 of us on the panel, and we met regularly for 5 years. And we decided, I'm digressing, that's okay. We decided that the biggest service that we could provide to church was to change ourselves, not concentrate on trying to fix anybody else. But the changes we made, the 5 of us on the panel, were replicated by many others in the congregation over the 5-year period. These intrinsic changes then produced the extrinsic ones the church had been trying to achieve. The panel members did not fix the church. The willingness of the congregation to examine and change the way they communicated about their issues fixed the Augusta church. The uproar that precipitated the positive changes was not necessary. It was unfortunate. But it was how it happened there. The Augusta UU Church had its own elephant to deal with. But to accomplish its own spring cleaning, the congregation had to learn to listen to one another. Once active and receptive listening began, there was no holding the church back. If it can happen there, believe me, it can happen anywhere. That's all my prepared words. Now, I'm going to see if I can make this thing work, and I'll come down there, and we can talk about it if anybody has anything to say.
Eggs. The egg, that miracle of life, is one of the oldest symbols of creation, associated with images of that primordial creator, the ancient bird goddess, whose Neolithic images archaeologists discovered in old Europe. She supplied the water that fell from the sky and the water that came up from below. Because the fetus comes to life from the waters of the womb, the egg and egg-shaped womb are both images of the beginning of life. After the deprivation of winter, early hunter-gatherers were happy to supplement their diet with clutches of eggs laid in the spring by many different kinds of birds. Hence the hunts associated with this time of year in the Northern Hemisphere, albeit 6 months ago. Sounds like Easter. This spring, I've been enjoying watching a pair of pollocks nesting along my walk to work. They squawk really loudly when I peek in. They don't like it. But day by day, I watch as an extra chick has been running around, so cute and full of joy. I often wonder if the egg is a good metaphor for our church and community. It's nice and warm and comfortable inside, exactly as it is now. But what if we dare to tap at that shell, to change our surroundings and connect with the world and community in a different way? It often reminds me of that cartoon of twin infants in their mother's womb, arguing about whether there really is a life after birth. There is only one way to find out: to go forth and be daring. Blessed be.